That was then, this is now, chapter 9. Mark drove me to the hospital the next day, and I got 15 stitches in my face and had my ribs taped. As luck would have it, I got the same doctor that had sewed up Mark a few months before when he had been busted with a bottle. He remembered Mark all right. Most people did. He gave us he gave us a disgusted look and said, "Don't you punks ever do anything besides fight?" Mark growled something real cute, but I couldn't get mad. I felt sick, ashamed of myself, even though I hadn't done anything. All I could think about was Mike's getting beat up for driving a black girl home. I kept remembering him saying he didn't hate the guys who did it. Well, I didn't hate the shepherds either. I tried to explain this to Mark as we drove home. I was so wrapped up in what I was trying to get across to him that I was startled when Mark suddenly burst out, "What are you trying to do to me, Brian?" "What?" I said, confused. Mark had turned white and his voice was shaking as if he was about to cry. I couldn't believe that. I had never seen Mark cry, except from physical pain. "How do you think I feel, man? You won't let me get the shepherds for you. And here you go, giving me this song and dance about how you don't feel bad about getting beat up. You think I don't know they beat you up for something I did? And here you are, practically saying you had it coming, when it was me who cut Angela's hair. It was me who planned it, and me who did it. And it's you who gets beat up for it. Like that damn fool Mike. He feels like he had it coming, feels guilty for something somebody else did. Man, that is sick. How do you think I felt finding you lying there in the yard? I knew it was the shepherds. If they had killed you, it would have been my fault. That is eating me up, Brian, and you won't even let me get even for you." He was crying. I just went sick inside. "Mark, it ain't your fault. It's just that I'm sick of fighting. I'm sick of this circle of beating up people and getting beat up. It's stupid." I reached over and gave him an easy punch on the shoulder. "I ain't dead, man. There's nothing to worry about." Mark took a deep breath, and even though his voice was normal, he was gripping the steering wheel so hard that his knuckles were white. "I don't know what's the matter with me. I never worry about what if. I never did until me and Terry came home and found you lying there smashed up. Then I think, what if? And look what happens to me." He shrugged. "You don't want to get even with the shepherds? That's your business." We just couldn't get through to each other. He didn't understand why I didn't dig fights anymore. I didn't understand how he could accept everything that came along without question, without wanting to change it. Mom nearly had a fit when she saw me. She was well by then, back at her job. I almost gave her a relapse. I had never been so messed up. A black eye, she could take. Stitches in my lip, she could take. Smashed ribs, she could take. But not all at the same time. I was feeling so lousy that I didn't mind her fussing at me. I pretended that it was her who made me go to bed, but I was glad to be there. "You want me to call Kathy?" Mark asked after I'd been put to bed. "Yeah, you mind?" He could get to a payphone and I couldn't. "Sure, I mind. Beating up the shepherds would be easier, but for you, buddy, I'll do it." He gave me his famous Mark grin. "I know she'll be glad to hear from me." I tried to grin back at him, but it was difficult. It's pretty lousy to have the two people you care about most hate each other. I must have dozed off after Mark left. I felt pretty bad. The painkiller shots had worn off and I was running a fever. I don't know how long I was asleep, but when I came to, Kathy was sitting next to the bed. "Hi, Brian," she said, and her voice and her face were so serious that for a dazed second, I couldn't figure out if it was Kathy or Eminem. I really felt dizzy and drunk and confused. "How do you feel?" she asked when I couldn't say anything. I just lay there and looked at her stupid like. "Oh, all right," I said, which made a lot of sense. "I'm glad you're here." "Are you?" she said, and she was crying. I had both her and Mark crying within 24 hours. I must be really something. "Kathy, I am really glad you are here," I said. "I love you." "Okay," she sobbed. "Okay." Then she reached over and held my hand. I took a quivering breath and looked at the ceiling. That hadn't been so hard after all. If I could do that, maybe there were a few other things I could take care of. "Well," Kathy said finally, gulping back her tears, "your mother says you'll be all right in a couple of days." She sort of half laughed. "You just look so awful, Brian." "You look great," I said. She didn't really, I guess, because you never do see a girl who looks good while she's crying, except in the movies. But to me, she looked good. I'll be fine in a day or two. Then we can go find Eminem. I got a lead on him, I said. My mind was clearing up. Really? Like I hoped, this took her mind off me for a little while, and like I hoped, not much. Yeah, Mark says he's seen him at this hippie commune house. Kathy looked shocked. One of those free love places? I don't think that's the right word for it. I couldn't help grinning. Anyway, he's been staying there. I went over to look for him yesterday, I think. I was still a little confused as to what day it was or what time. He wasn't there then, but maybe we can find him. Don't worry, the place wasn't that bad. He could have been in worse places. All right. She smiled at me like I knew everything on earth. Like whatever I said went, and it really made me feel good. We'll go look for him when you get better. She reached over and gave me a quick, light kiss. Because of the stitches in my lip, this hurt, but not much. I took a couple of days sick leave from work. I didn't want to go to work looking like some prize fighter. But as soon as I was able, I took the car and went for a drive by myself. I had been thinking about a lot of things. Kathy, Mark, Eminem, and Charlie. I drove around for 2 hours before I finally made up my mind. I drove out to the cemetery, the cheap cemetery where people who don't have money get buried. I hadn't gone to Charlie's funeral, but I knew where he was buried. I finally found his grave. This was not easy since there wasn't much of a marker. There weren't any big headstones in the whole place. I went and stood in front of his barren grave. No flowers, no nothing. Just the place where what was left of Charlie lay. I said out loud, "Thanks for letting me use your car, Charlie. Thanks for saving my life." This wasn't hard to do. I wish I'd done it when he could have heard me. I don't know. Maybe it was a dumb thing to do, but I sure felt better. I picked up Kathy 2 nights later and we went looking for Eminem. Mark had gone out somewhere. He was spending more and more time away from home. Mom was worried about him, I could tell. By now, she was also bugged about where he was getting the money he kept bringing home. I still figured he was doing some serious poker playing, but I didn't want to tell Mom that, as she didn't have too high an opinion of poker or gambling in general. Me getting mixed up in that pool hustling business hadn't done much to glorify gambling either. I just love you, Mother. I just love your mother, Kathy said as we left the house. She and Mom were getting along pretty good. This was fine with me, as I dug her parents okay too. Right now, Kathy was hacked off at her old man. She blamed him for Eminem's running away, but I like the guy. Most people do, I said. She knows everybody within 20 miles of here. The mailman brings her all the stray kittens he finds, and the neighborhood grocer gives her free cat food. We were feeling real good driving to the hippie house. We laughed and kidded and horsed around all the way. I figured we had a pretty good chance of coming home with Eminem this time. There were two Volkswagen buses parked in the driveway of the old house. I knew they belonged to the hippies because of the flowers and slogans painted on them. One read, "War is unhealthy for children and other living things." Really bright. "This is where he is?" Kathy sighed. "I still can't hardly believe that baby is living in a place like this." I guess big sisters always think of little brothers as babies, no matter how old they are. "Maybe it was good for him," I said. "Maybe being on his own made him grow up a little." I only half believed this. I had always had a good opinion of Eminem's mind, but being smart ain't being mature, as I have often proved. Anyway, we can't be sure he even wants to come home with us. If he doesn't, Daddy is going to call the cops and have them bring him home. He doesn't want to, but he keeps saying Eminem has had his fling and it's time he came home. This is my only chance to get him home without dragging the police into it. I didn't know that. Well, let's hope he comes with us. Maybe I could slug him and carry him home. Kathy laughed. No, let the cops do it if it comes to that. I'd rather have him hate the police than you. We walked up to the house. There were kids on the porch just watching the street. I stopped to talk with the biblical looking guy. "I'm looking for Baby Freak. He around?" "Yeah, he is." The guy was staring directly into my eyes. He had friendly, trusting eyes. "Are you a friend of his?" "Yeah, a good friend. This is his sister." Kathy gave him the big smile she won me with. The guy smiled back. "He's upstairs, I think." Suddenly, the guy looked worried. "He's been floating for a couple of days now." "Oh, no kiddin'," I said, keeping my cool, and Kathy followed my example. Talk to his travel agent, the hippie said. He's the cat with the red hair inside. Travel agent? What's that? Kathy whispered as we went in. I didn't want to tell her, didn't want her to feel that sudden cold waves of fear that I was feeling, so I said, I don't know. We found who we were looking for, a big, heavy guy with fire-colored hair, beard, and mustache. We're looking for Baby Freak, I said. I was beginning to see why Eminem had acquired this other nickname. Most of the kids there were at least 17 or 18, with a lot of college-aged kids. It was a real crowded place, but now I can't remember what everyone was doing. At least some of the kids were smoking grass. You could tell that by the smell. I was hoping the place didn't get raided while we were there. You can get busted just for being at a place where people are smoking pot. Yeah? Red said. Man, that kid is on a bad trip. Kathy made a funny yelping little sound. Some of these freaks have been dropping acid. Baby wanted to try it, so I sat with him. Bad trip, man, really bad. He's calmed down a little now, but all day today, me and some of these other cats been holding him, keeping him from jumping out the window. I felt like I was going to throw up. Kathy was as white as a sheet. Can we see him? She said in a tiny, expressionless voice. Sure. We followed him up the stairs. He led us to the same room Mark and I had gone to the last time we were there. This time, no one was there except the blonde chick who was curled up on the bed asleep and someone huddled in the corner. To my surprise, Red walked over to the huddle. Hey man, there's people here to see you, he said softly. Are they spiders? The person didn't raise his head, but the voice was Eminem's. No, man. Red laughed gently. They're squares. Eminem looked up, and I hardly recognized him. His hair was to his shoulders. He was a lot thinner. He was dirty, and the expression on his face was one I had never seen on him before: suspicion. Eminem, baby, it's me, Kathy. Kathy kneeled down in front of him. He was staring at her, not seeing her. Square spiders? He said, and his face was contorted in fear. I don't want to see any spiders. It's me, Kathy, she said again. Your sister. Don't you want to come home? I went to my stomach, Eminem said in a high, unnatural voice. He was talking too fast. I went down into my stomach and all these spiders came out. I never knew there were spiders in my stomach. I was there 10 years, and all that time these spiders kept chewing on me. They were big spiders. Kathy choked back a sob. Baby, what have you done to yourself? She said in a whisper. He seemed to see her. Kathy? I screamed and screamed and screamed, but nobody came to help me. He was shaking. He didn't look right. He looked sick. I kept trying to get back, but the spiders held me down and chewed on me, and the colors went in and out. I listened to the colors, and they were screaming too. Red and yellow screamed loudest. The spiders were eating them too. He kept trying to jump out the window, Red said. All day. We took turns holding him down. What did the guy want? A medal? He had given him the stuff in the first place. Kathy, I said, we ought to take him to the hospital. She looked at me quickly. Hospital? Then she nodded. Let me call Daddy first. She looked at Red. Do you have a phone I can use? She followed him out of the room. There was this other color, Eminem said to me seriously but half afraid, as if he thought I'd turn into a spider any minute. I don't know its name. It told me, but I forgot. It said I was being paid back for all the carrots I ate. I didn't know. I didn't know about the carrots before. I don't think it was my fault. He was crying. Tears were pouring down his face, but he hadn't changed his expression. He looked so thin and scared, not a bit like the Eminem I knew. Do you think I should be paid back for something I didn't know about? No, I said, clearing my throat. I don't think it was your fault. I put my arm around him and held him. He was shaking real bad. Kathy came back. Daddy's going to meet us at the hospital. Can you carry him? Yeah, I said. I picked him up easily. He couldn't have weighed more than 90 pounds. I'm so tired, Eminem said. I was gone so long, and I didn't have any sleep. I carried him down the stairs and out of that house. Nobody made any move to stop me. Nobody seemed to care. Kathy drove us to the hospital. Halfway there, Eminem started suddenly and screamed, "Where am I?" "It's okay, kid. You're gonna be okay." "Where am I?" He was screaming in terror. "Why don't I know where I am?" I was just sick. I didn't know how Kathy was managing to drive the car. I never felt so bad before. I just held on to Eminem. There wasn't any sense in trying to talk to him. I felt then that he was as much my little brother as Kathy's. That's how bad I felt. Mr. Carlson was waiting for us at the hospital. We drove right up to the emergency entrance, and there he was. I got out and picked Eminem up again, but I didn't have him for long. Mr. Carlson took him and carried him into the hospital, holding him very close, very tight. Eminem was telling him about the spiders.